Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mystic Voices. This is the segment of my channel where I bring spiritual leaders and teachers from all over the world, and we talk about the spiritual topics that you want to know about. And today I have a very special guest, and I'm so excited because I've been wanting to talk to him for a while now. And I came across him on TikTok. We'll get to that in a minute, but he's got such a beautiful soul. He's got amazing energy. He reads energy too, and he's clairvoyant too, just like me. So we have so much to talk about, and we really need to sort of compare notes, I guess, in a sense. And without further ado, please welcome Kimo Kepano, also known as the Light Seer or the Hawaiian High Seer. Welcome, Kimo. So glad you're here.
First of all, that was a very beautiful introduction. I really appreciate that, friend. It is my pleasure to be here. You know, we were supposed to meet earlier, and because of circumstances beyond our control, I wasn't able to make it. So I'm so thankful that you've made the time and the space for me to be able to be here today. Thank you.
Of course. I mean, I wouldn't miss it because we've got so much to talk about. And again, and this is funny because, something happened. We had to cancel our video recording, our live. It was supposed to be a live. And while I was doing a live stream and Kimo, he wasn't there, and I connected to him. And afterwards we started emailing each other. And he said, basically, he was very polite, but he basically said, I can hear you. You've tuned in. Everything's fine. We're good.
You did it in such a kind way. You know, for someone like me, and probably someone like you as well, I'm very tuned into when someone tunes into me. And we have to create these appropriate boundaries and more. And I don't know if you felt this in your growing process in terms of how you tune into your own system, but it can be very overwhelming. I had a lot of panic attacks in my growing process because you feel so much coming in to you in terms of people who have questions, and then you always, and people from all over the world. You know, when I first kind of started to blow up on social media, I was very overwhelmed because you can feel at all times someone's pulling. And then you have to recalibrate within the electronics of social media as well. So it's a whole other thing. I don't know if you can tune into that as well, but it's fine.
I tune in, and I've got my crystals. I've got crystals around me as well for the EMF and all that. I don't know. You believe in crystals as well. You believe in the energy of crystals and the property of, right, Kimo?
I do. Well, and for me, I believe that everything is a growing process, and everything should be a growing process. You know, I think that one of the wild misconceptions about someone like me who speaks on TV and podcasts, social media, and more is that I was always this way. And the truth is, I always had the seed of being this way, but I was not always this way. Well, you know, this is a product of someone who's done work and research and continual education. This is not magic. And in terms of tuning into crystals, when I was younger, I thought, well, I don't know how that makes any sense. Why would there be any energy inside a crystal? However, I knew that I could see energy, and I always have been able to, so much so that it's something that I can do to be helpful for doctors and more. Right? And I've been doing that for a while now. But when it came to crystals, I challenged myself, well, what would happen if I tuned into just this simple little river rock? And when I looked into a simple little river rock, I was shocked as to what kind of information and energy was moving not only around it, but within it. But then to take the next step, to challenge myself to look inside of crystal energy, it was like I was speaking to myself. It felt like it was this reciprocal mirror. You know, you're looking at this mirror, and you're seeing a reflection of yourself amplified in this energy. And now I adamantly say that I welcomed myself into the crystal bitch world.
Love it.
But it was a journey to get there. And for me, I'm very scientific minded, so I need proof. I need proof at all times before I feel comfortable sharing any other information that is not actually real for me.
I know. I'm the same. Absolutely. I got into crystals later in life too, for the similar reasons as you. And now I have a crystal shop.
Yeah, I love that.
Because I love them so much. And it's not just the energy that they emit, it's how you use the crystals.
Yeah.
You know, it's just how it's not, people think that I'm going to buy a crystal, I'm going to hold it, and it's going to do magic. It doesn't do magic. It's
No,
just
no,
like what we do as well. We don't do magic. We're not telepathic per se, because people think, oh, you can read minds. You're not, psychic. You're not medium. You read minds. Well, that's another ability. If I can read minds, that means I'm intuitively open, right? So that means I'm receptive to energy.
absolutely, absolutely.
Which brings me to my first question. Which is, you've heard, I mean, everyone's asked you this, but this is a nice way to introduce yourself to the world, and how you developed your abilities as well. How did you discover that you're a healer, a psychic, a medium? Just describe your journey.
So, to introduce myself to your viewers, and the way that I describe myself is going to be a little bit different. I describe myself as someone who is Kanaka Maoli, which translates into Aboriginal Hawaiian. This is where I grew up. This is the cultural background that I have in. Now, as a child, I started to speak openly to spirit energy when I was 3, and I was bringing in names, I was bringing in a little bit of their past, and my family started to record me. And at first, my parents were like, "Well, this is a really funny kid. He's speaking about all these things that, maybe he just got some really good imaginary friends." But then I started to talk about things that no one could understand how I knew, because there was things that I wasn't supposed to know. Now, the joke in my family is that I have the memory of an elephant, and I remember everything. I remember seeing my first spirit energy when I was 3 years old. I remember their first names, their last names, how they passed. I remember what they did when they were passing. I remember how they looked, where they went, and I remember watching spirit energy come in and move out and come in and move out. And I remember very vividly my spirit guide, not my guardians, not my spirit team that around me, but my actual spirit guides coming through instantly to help me understand. And it was a really wild experience. And if you could listen to 3-year-old Kimo on these recordings speak, it'd be kind of funny. Well, as I grew up, my abilities, luckily, started to grow as I started to grow. And even though I was considered a very, profound clairvoyant as a child, the language of mediumship and psychic communication isn't really something that we utilize in Aboriginal languages. That's more language of human that was influenced by culture here. So, as a person who was a young seer, as I got older and I started to work with spiritual practitioners and more, by the time I was 13, I started to challenge my spiritual practitioners, because they would bring up educational information that didn't look visually how they were describing it. And I learned that a lot of people were just regurgitating the information that they had learned, they had read in a book, they had learned from another teacher, that they had reinterpreted and more, and it didn't vibe because it was in direct dichotomy of the way that it looked. So I started to challenge my spiritual practitioners. And one of the things that I really value from what they said to me is, well, if you think that you can see everything, then go out and see everything. And that's when, luckily, we realized that my ability to see was way beyond spirit energy. And I always do a little reminder that the spirit energy, that is the medium, the person in between, in the middle of the living and the dead. And psychic senses are tuning into our sensories and more, and then the intuitives are, also working with their abilities and more. But for me, energy moves in and it moves out. Energy always looks like something to me, way beyond spirit energy, way beyond your supersensory, way beyond the medical things that are going on inside of someone's body. It's the things that you are connected to, and how does your energy visually connect to the energy of the blade of the grass? Or how does your energy affect the blade of the grass, which then affects the wings of the butterfly? Well, that visually looks like something to me. So when I am in assistance and in service to a client or to a seminar workshop that I'm offering and more, I have to work really hard to tune in to what I choose to see. If someone asks me a question about spirit, I have to choose to see the filter of spirit. If they ask me about health issues, I have to quiet my mind and choose to see that,
I
because it's
relate.
very overwhelming to see everything all at the same time. So this is a process. So my language of utilizing high seer is actually old Polynesian language, because it was way different, and I don't want to say better than or less than, because there is no better than. It's just different than seeing spirit only, or
Hmm.
just only, because it's going way beyond that into seeing the dimensional frequencies and more. And it is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs instead of this brain.
I can relate though 100%. It took me a long time to find those layers, to go to like penetrate through those layers, and get to the point where I could actually also control the
Absolutely.
what you're reading, who you're reading, how you're reading it, and whether now's the right time. I don't know. I mean, you're a seer, so you're much more into this than I am, right? But I find that sometimes when someone's not ready or not meant to be read, it's like my spirit team's like, nope, nope, nope. Everything's
Yeah.
blocked.
Absolutely. And this is why I encourage everyone when they're learning how to tune in. And I do want to say from the very beginning that everyone can tune in. And I don't want the ability for me to be able to see it in a high form doesn't mean that I am better. It doesn't mean that I am more developed. It just means I was prone to being able to do this. And then I worked hard to be able to amplify it. But everyone can do this. Everyone can do it in different degrees in their own way. Now, when I talk to other individuals who are in the learning process, because I'm an educator and my whole goal is to teach what I know and to teach individuals how to do these kinds of things. When we are tuning into those blockages that we get when we're trying to intuit information for someone else, those blockages manifest in many ways. And for someone like you, it might be an actual block. I get nothing. Some people, it'll be like a block of a color. For me, when I was first trying to open up my mind and really intuit on command as opposed to just kind of intuiting, randomly, everyone appeared as a series of walls for me, meaning that if I wasn't allowed in, I would see that person dropped inside of a box. Or if I wasn't allowed in, I would see them behind a brick wall. Sometimes it'd be a chain fence, which would tell me, okay, I can see what they're doing, but I'm not allowed to go any further. Sometimes there'd be a hole in the gate, which allowed me to find, well, how do I get into that person's mind in a way that is more ethical? So I don't see that anymore. That was part of my growing process. That has had an evolution and a change, but that's very much how it felt like for me at first. And it's different for everyone.
It's interesting that you said that, because when I was much younger and not as seasoned as I am now, because now I'm professional, like I do this full time. It's funny when you say there is like, you find sort of like that hole where you can sort of like go through and find a way to read energy. What I didn't realize is that I have to respect that when there is a block, there is a block, because I would like try and that would have physical effects on me.
Yep.
Okay, and my energy. Now, of course, I know that if something is not meant to be read, it's not meant to be read. I leave it alone because there is a higher reason for that. But you're so right.
Absolutely. And what I love about what you just said, and I'll reflect that on my own experience, and I want the people who are listening to really assess and analyze. When we are going through our growth process, we have to break through our ego. And our ego want to get the information. So we find the back door, we find the hidden path, and we will always get a little nauseated or a little sick or the stomach drops or something happens because we weren't allowed to do it. But when I was young, I was doing this to my friends, to my teachers. I was doing it to everyone. And I used it to my advantage. When I was in high school, I would joke around with my brothers who are also seers. And I would say, okay, so we're going to use our abilities today because I want to change my grade, and I would find the energetic back door to be able to, and this is horrible, but to manipulate the energy around my teacher to help them change their mind. It was very much about ego. But as we continue with our growth process, we have to move. I call them garage mediums. We were all a garage medium at one point. But I want us to move beyond what the ego is, and that's the continual education element. And even though I am a high seer, I'm always challenging myself to learn. I have to always be in a state of learning. This is not the end. I am not the doyen of all things metaphysical and spiritual and magical. I am still a student of this process. And yes, I can be validated by big things on TV and more, but that's it's nothing, that's just ego. What I need is continual education. And I say this to myself every month. What am I going to learn different about my practice this month? And if I get to the end of the month, and if I hadn't had even the slightest amount of change, I have to change the alchemy a little bit. That's just my personal challenge. And I do challenge other people to do that as well. And I think that we both have encountered some of those mediums and psychics and intuitives who have been in practice for multiple years or multiple decades and yet have found no growth. No
Yes,
growth.
absolutely. It's so true. Why? Because they're ego led, as you said. And
Absolutely.
I find that there are times when I have like certain successes too, and it's a good point. And why I'm mentioning this is because yes, I've learned I've learned to put my ego behind. It's been years where I leave my ego behind when I'm reading, when I'm on YouTube, when I'm on social media, when I help people, because this is what I do. This is what my calling is. But sometimes ego creeps in. It does, because we're human. It
Mm-hmm.
just creeps in. And that's when it's as if spirit protects me from my ego, and spirit's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
no. Your readings are going to be way off and you're going to be way blocked. Why? Because you're not using the right energy, the right intention. Your intention is wrong, right?
Right.
And
Right.
that's why I'm a very moral reader. So are you, which brings us to what you said before, that you've got a lot of readers out there that do not follow, they do not have a moral compass, and they do allow for ego to lead them. And
Exactly.
unfortunately, a lot of those are on social media.
Greatly, unfortunately. I feel like
Yes.
one of the inundating things that I find on social media is that there are a lot of us who are really trying to work hard to retrain and reteach the collective because a lot of this information is archaic and it's old ideologies that are based in things that were speculation or hunches and more, and things that are so old, hundreds and maybe even 1,000 years old, some of these speculations that can't be validated. Now, the only validations that they found in these old ideologies was that there was a hunch that was verified. But we have
True.
also changed and evolved as humankind. So we have to change and evolve with that. It is very hard because I feel like there's a lot of spiritualists and psychics and more who push against me. There's a lot of people who will block me on my social media because
Really?
oh yeah, because I continually push the narrative of what happens when you push through fear and what happens when you transmute that energy that you always believed was attached and malignant and
Mm,
stuck energy and someone hasn't crossed over and more. Well, that's old ideology. And we can find when you really, really tune in and learn how to transmute those old thoughts that there is so much more information on the other side that is of help, that can be resourceful and more. And there's not enough individuals who are speaking that narrative, that new narrative. So
mm.
I try hard. I get pushed back a lot, including from psychics who have millions of followers and subscribers, millions, and it drives me crazy. However, I have to remind myself that my frustration is in my ego resource. So beyond that, I have to also remind myself that these are individuals who hadn't found the resources that allowed them to have continual growth. And the only time that I find myself saying, well, I'm upset that they haven't had a continual growth and I'm upset with this person is if that person has the resources to have continual growth, but
True.
they choose
Not
not
to.
to grow. And that's my big problem with that.
That's a good point. And since we're on the topic of social media, and since I met you or we found each other on
Mhm.
TikTok, how do you believe spiritual talk? Let's talk about, because this is a big thing. I believe that spirituality, psychics, mediums are now becoming more of a mainstream thing. It's not so much a taboo subject or like a hush hush subject.
Yeah.
Even really, I've got clients that are deeply religious and
Mhm.
Christian, and they come to me.
Mhm.
Okay, they won't tell their parents or they won't tell their spouse
Mhm.
because of that taboo or that belief, right? But they do come to me for a reading, and they do come to me for guidance and coaching and whatnot. And I do feel that social media played a big part in this, a big part into bringing us to the world and
Yes.
making it less mystical, less woo-woo, less, dark, like
Yes.
most people. So how do you believe that spiritual talk is contributing to the spread or of the inside of spirituality?
Yeah, so blessing and a curse, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Blessing and a curse. So, for example, my marketing team had asked me to join TikTok years ago, and I said, "No, I'm not gonna do that." But
Mm,
finally, one of my marketers said, "You know, Kimo, the the ideas on TikTok specifically have changed a little bit." So I thought it was just, people creating silly little dances anymore. And I don't know, but now there's a lot of information happening. So I joined, and it hasn't even been a full year since I've joined social media. But when I joined, I thought, well, I'm just going to be the purest version of myself and see what happens. And I tried some videos, and my marketing team said, Kimo, you're trying really hard to educate. And you're trying really hard to create content that is about community, and we're not sure if that's the right venue for
hmm,
you to be speaking in that way. And I said, well, if I'm going to be here, then I'm going to be here in my own way, and that's who I am, and that's what I do. And I have
hmm,
found that the people who do gravitate towards me in terms of spiritual TikTok and more have gravitated towards me because they are looking for that information. And like anyone, you look for information that resonates, that could be resonating in love or that could be resonating in fear. It really depends on the wiring of the individual. So I think that the beauty and the curse part of spiritual TikTok is that it does resonate with a lot of individuals who continually push the narrative of fear or don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, because that aligns in some of the templating that they were raised in. And I think that what you and I are discovering when you have individuals who come forward as maybe Christian or Catholic, or maybe even Hasidic or Orthodox Jews or Muslim or
hmm,
LDS, Mormon, and more, which are clients we've all had, when that person can start to work through the language that they've learned, we can find that our actual language is very parallel in terms of spirituality and religious ideology. We just have to get rid of the semantics. And I always challenge someone who is seeking information and insight from me. And I have literally had, and I won't go into any great detail, but women who are not aligned to be in their own religious practice and a place where they can have full autonomy in their marriage, who will hide and have sessions with me in secret. And I can understand and value that, but what we try to do is say, but what can we talk about? What is the language that we can use that is way beyond religion? And there's always success. I have never found someone unsuccessful who comes with those kinds of backgrounds. But we have to keep in mind that that stark energy that you're talking about has a lot of templating. So people are going to follow that template.
good point. I wanted to ask you as well. Let's talk a little bit about the collective, okay? Because that's a big topic as well.
Mhm,
Not just among us
mhm,
healers, light seers, but it's a topic now for everyone.
mhm,
Everyone hears about the great ascension, the shift, the collective, the five, ascending to 5D, et cetera. There's a lot of information out there, and can be a bit confusing for people because a lot of times I get it on YouTube or wherever I
yeah.
am and people ask me about it. So my question to you is, what do you feel is the perspective, or what is your perspective actually
Mhm.
on the role of spirituality in this current global shift that we're experiencing, especially when it comes to the greater consciousness and the ascension? There are a lot of buzzwords out there. I realize for people that have been flying around, everyone uses different terminology for that, but the bottom line is one. But I would like to hear your perspective on this.
I mean, I do have a belief system that is contingent on the way that it looks. And the way that it looks is going to feed into those buzzwords of 5D and ascension. However, as an educator, and I started teaching workshops by the time I was 16. I've been doing this for a very long time. I'm in my 40s now. As an educator, I know that if I just raw dog it into your brain and use language like that, it's actually going to push people away. And my goal is to help individuals learn and grow, literally grow to the place where they can have those kinds of understandings. So even though I have agreements with a lot of that language, I feel like a lot of that language comes off as a lot of gatekeeping. Well, I'm not going to pay attention to that person because they're not on my frequency, because they're not on my vibe. And this is language that I used growing up. I did this as well, not realizing that it actually pushes the people away that I'm trying to be of assistance to. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to just find people that align with my exact beliefs. I want to find individuals who are curious. I want to find the skeptics because skeptics just need evidence, and evidence can come through in a way that is kind and informative and more. And in order to do that, it can't come off as a critique. It needs to come off as help. So I don't use a lot of the buzzwords in my educational practices because I don't want to be a gatekeeper. However, I do find agreement and alignment with a lot of that original language. I just don't use that language. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
we've gone a little out of control. A lot of individuals are making these big, wild speculations about end of times and the world going through these different changes. And I say, well, the world has always had moments like this, and
Thank
it
you.
will always have moments like this. Every so
Thank
many
you.
years, we go through an ascension moment. And we think that the ascension moment in the religious background that I grew up in needed to be literally raising off of the earth in this
Right.
body from the eternal flames of hell as the earth burns. You know,
Right.
but what we have to realize is that this is an energetic growth, an emotional growth, and a spiritual growth, not about the actual density of these bodies. So I'm very mindful and I curate the words that I use.
Yeah, I mean, you are an educator, so it's good to curate your words and share the right words and terminology out there because which for people who want to go into spirituality on a deeper level and just not just this surface level, like oh, I'm spiritual because I believe I've got guides or believe that my ancestors or deceased loved one is around me. Yes, that's you being spiritual, but that's not really you connecting not
Mhm.
only with your core but with your higher self too. So and you're right, like these buzzwords are just flying around, but I love that you're using your own words for that because at the end of the day it's not about putting bows and nice words
Exactly.
and
And
using
one
them as hashtags.
Yeah, listen, there's some of the things that I struggle with. I get tagged in a lot of videos, and if you look at my social media, I respond to a lot of, I do a lot of
I
blind.
see you. I'm impressed by you, Kimo. I'm impressed by you because I can't follow this. Like I try with TikTok and then I kind of give up and then I go back on it after like, oh, I admire you for doing that.
Well,
I do.
thank you. Well, it's hard, and I have to put up a lot of
I know.
protections in order to be on it.
Uh,
But I do a lot of these blind reactions to individuals. I get sent these videos, and people ask me to blind
I've seen
react.
them.
And
Mm.
sometimes I'll be sent information from someone who has had a download of 5D and Ascension and more, but they're literally raw dogging it into the collective's mind. This is what you gotta do, and if you don't do this, and what does that actually do? It actually creates a further narrative of fear, and it
Right.
also creates a further narrative to feel like if I can't get there, therefore what am I? And again, we have to understand education that we have to work with the neurons of the brain. Our brains can only activate and understand things that are in its habit. If the brain doesn't have any thoughts that are in its actual habit, it will receive that as doubt and fear or being wary of something.
Mm.
So I think that it's critical to understand how you speak to the collective. And we both know that there's a lot of these individuals who speak in these big, big ways. Maybe they speak in fear-based language, or maybe
Yes.
just a pretty face, or maybe they're just incredibly charismatic, and that gets them a lot of attention. And I'm not blind. I know that I come across as very charismatic, and I know that I present the way that I present. But what I hope that people are trying to do is to say, but what is the language this individual is using that allows me to say, well, now I'm curious. But there's a vibe about that dude, completely separate by the fact that I'm charismatic or that I look the way that I look, because that's not of interest to me. What I want you
Yeah.
to do is follow my words because they resonate.
Absolutely. And people do because that's again an ego, that's your ego self coming forward. People do tend to choose someone over someone else, not because of
Absolutely.
experience or, of of experience pretty much, but because of their looks.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
it it's a fact.
Well, and
It's a
one of the
human
things, and I
nature.
don't know if people are just listening to the sounds of our voices right now, or if they're watching us, but if for people that are just listening to us, I'm sitting watching you, and you present incredibly beautiful. You are a very aesthetically beautiful woman, and I'm
Thank you.
positive, you're welcome, but I'm positive that that is something for some people. And what I also want
Yes.
them to do, yes, I'm not going to judge anyone for following you because you are a beautiful woman, but I also want them to follow you because of the energy that you exude, because of the information that you bring up, because you are there to be of assistance. And again, I think that a lot of these individuals who are getting quite big on social media present in a certain way and have very thin information. And again, some of these people on social media who block me, I'm challenging them. I'm saying, okay, but you keep on saying that you're able to do all these things, but yet you haven't provided any proof. You're just faffing around your room with a cute little body and booty and
True.
saying that you're a medium holding some kind of haunted doll, but yet you are not providing any kind of educational information. And that's not the collective.
You're so right. You're so spot on. And I've got, listen, that's a pain point for me too. It's like,
Mhm.
come on, you guys. Okay, I'm glad spirit, like healers like us are out there. We're accessible to people because we want to help. We want to help. We want, like, for me as well, I was for 25 years in marketing. I was a
Mhm.
marketing director for big companies. But at the
Mhm.
same time, on the side, I was helping people, friends of friends, family, etc., with my abilities. I was also learning at the same time because I was constantly reading and practicing and learning and visiting other mediums and asking them 1,000 questions and understanding and whatnot. So I quit everything because I had my second awakening.
Yeah.
Yes, I had 2 awakenings 5 years ago, or a bit longer. I don't remember. I've lost track of time. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's good because I don't remember. But and after that, it was just a whole new world. I really quit my job just like that. You know,
Yeah.
I had a good job, good position. It was very well paid. I've got kids, so that was a big risk. But
Yeah.
no, I felt like this was pro COVID, and I felt like I really needed to put myself out there and
Mhm.
help people. And I had a mentor back then, and she's a psychic medium, and she said, use YouTube. She said, what are you doing? You have to be on YouTube. You're going to be successful on YouTube because you're going to reach out to the people that need you, that need to help, that are open.
Well,
And
and she's right.
honestly, that's the best thing I've ever done. You know, because as you, let's just take TikTok now. Let's take that as an example because you do have your practice and you do private readings. So do I. But let's take TikTok. Just the fact, and you don't read people on TikTok. You don't do these live readings. I do them sometimes on my channel where I'll just do with tarot, like a reading, or sometimes I do. Yeah, I know a lot of. I know what you're gonna say because I can feel what you're thinking, but just
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
okay. We're very connected because we're like,
I'm listening.
you're right. You're right.
I'm listening. Well, I like your technique. I haven't watched you do a live, but I'm I'm apologizing right now because I'm being a little nosy. But I like the way that you appear to be reading. My problems with these readers is that it's very much about ego still. They haven't moved beyond ego. It's more about
Yeah,
proving that they can, as opposed to proving that I can be in service. And that's a big difference. Huge
I
difference.
agree.
You know, and you are on the other end of that. You are the difference. So my reaction
I
and that
hope so.
you're picking up on is I'm frustrated with a lot of these tarot readers and more who are just moving through ego, you know? And one of the things that I think a lot of individuals don't realize when they're truly wanting to be a part of this world that we're a part of in terms of the healing and holistic world is that there are individuals who put so much weight into what you say that we
Yeah.
can't be flippant about this. This can't just come off of the top of our head. It needs to be truly divined. It needs to be truly channeled because people put so much weight into this. And then if they're paying us for our services, people save money to show up for you. That's a really big deal. So I feel like one of the things that we are starting to lose is the honoring of that energetic deal.
I agree. I agree. I'm so glad you said that because you know sometimes I get criticism. People are like you should put your prices up just because people feel uncomfortable where my price ranges. And I'm
Mhm.
like, no, actually, because I have people that come to me, some of them on a regular basis, because I do spiritual coaching, so I help them out if they've been through trauma, and they're really struggling to, to
Yeah,
save that money to
yeah.
come to me. And that's why I do it for free on YouTube.
Mhm.
Because I'm like, there might be a message that you need to hear. There might be
Absolutely.
someone here that will give you closure and will help you. And I'll do it. And I get like you've been blocked on TikTok. I get a lot of flack for that too,
Yeah, yeah.
unfortunately. But I'll keep going. I don't care, because
But what
people need us.
people need it, and I think that when it comes to these readings and more, it is imperative to remember that yes, we have the worth of what we do in terms of money, absolutely, but we
Right.
also do have to provide services. I take pro bono all the time, truly.
Good for you.
Even though I don't advertise that I do pro bono, I do. I'm going to say not people are going to want to know. But my calendar
Now they
is
will.
now they'll know. My calendar is completely booked. My calendar, there's no spaces in my calendar. It'll be completely booked for months on end. My calendar will take approximately 6 clients a day, but I hide extra time in my day for a pro bono. I do 1 a day, 5 days a week, and those are the
I love
individuals.
you, Kimo. I think, no, I do, because that just shows who you are. Okay, aside from
Thank
your
you.
practice and your experience and your abilities, it just shows you who you are as a person as well. That
Well, thank
you make time for that.
Well, we have to give back. We really do.
I
And
agree.
again, it's one thing to step into this world of knowing what we're able to do, but we do have to be in service to individuals who don't have the means and the funds.
Mhm.
So for me, I get a little overwhelmed with all the emails that we get, but you go through the emails and then you get that hit of this person is being very honest. Yesterday's
Yes.
pro bono was a woman who's single parent of 4 kids and was very open and honest, said, "I'm having some problems. I can't afford you. So is there any information you can give me?" So of course you're going to show up at this time on this day, and we're just going to work together.
Oh.
And that's what we do. And I do that at least once a day. But it's important. So I love that you're doing these readings for free. I think it really shows to the merit that you are. I think it's a really important thing. So I'm glad that you're doing it.
I'm glad I'm doing the too. And although I have to use a lot of, I have to protect myself, because, as you know, we're just out there, and sometimes I'm not, sometimes I just don't do a good enough job, and then I do get physical
Mhm.
symptoms for a couple of days afterwards.
Mhm.
But I don't regret it, because honestly, the world needs more of us, more like us, where we can help, and the more people open up and awaken to who we really are, and that this is not reality in the sense that we think that what we're living right now is reality.
Mhm.
That there's like a vast universe out there that we have access to, and people don't realize that everyone has access to that without the middleman, who is us,
Right.
basically. Right?
You
It's
know,
just learning. Yeah, sorry, go on.
no, I love that. I always joke around that if everyone could see what it's like to see. I can't answer that I see everything because I don't know if I see everything. I know that I see a great deal more than most people. But if everyone could see through the lens of the seer's perspective, even for 5 seconds, I truly believe we would obliterate war because energy is not prejudiced. Energy does not discriminate, but our brains do.
Hmm.
Our brains are very much about ego and power and money and prejudice and more. But energy doesn't move like that. Energy is not judicious anymore. Now, you said something that I want to come back to for a moment. For all those individuals who are listening or watching and maybe do some of your live readings for free, or maybe going to another seer or medium or second or doing and offering services for free. When we do these services for free, we will always tap into our own energy reserve. Always. We will always be more depleted afterwards, and that is our offering to the collective. But one of the things, I'm going to call out some of these individuals, these listeners with love,
Go
because
ahead.
many of the individuals come with a question and they want more than you offer, and they want more.
Yes.
And I get frustrated with that because I say, if you were to spend 2 minutes in self reflection, you would actually gain the answer. And I gave you an answer, but it wasn't enough. So then you want another one, and it still wasn't enough, to the point where that person who is being read is voracious and insatiable, and that is a major no-no for me. Which is why when you are done with that session, you continually feel more and more drained because they're still trying to tap in, still trying to pull out. And that's the danger. That's the danger of doing these kinds of offerings for free. And it is, even though I only do one pro bono a day, it's still hard. I can feel all the other individuals who want to have more information. And I push back against that. Please sit in self reflection just for a moment, as opposed to wanting all the information for free, either with money or spiritually. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
comes for a price, and the price is my energy. And if I offer it to you, then that's it, and that's the end of it. Please do not ask for anything more than I'm willing to offer you.
I'm so glad you said that, because I get that, and then I feel guilty because that's who
No,
I am. Yeah, I
don't.
know. I'm getting better at it, but you're so right. People will come to you and they will ask, like, you'll have a proper reading with them, and then it's like the follow up emails, like, and and he said this, or what happens if this, or would you? And you're like, no, hold on, we had a reading. You got all the information that you were meant to get. There's certain stuff that you're not meant to get.
Right.
Now it's all about timing. It's all about
It's
what you do with the information.
Well, and I think that one of the things that people fail to understand is that learning is a process. We don't go from first grade all the way to year 12. You don't do that in 1 year. You have to allow the brain to grow and settle. So that way there's a continual process. So when a client, at least for me, when a client meets with me at the very end of our session, I reiterate to them that if you are wanting to have more time with me, this has to settle. And I give all these exercises per session. And I tell them, if you come back to me, and if I tune into you right before you log on, if I find that you have not been progressively working on these exercises or just these thought processes or pivoting your mind in some way, then I'm going to rescind your appointment. And I do this all the time because it is a waste of your time, your money, your resources, my time, my energy, and my mind to show up and having to reteach you because you didn't spend any time working on these processes. And they can't just send you an email day one and say, well, it hasn't worked. Well, you haven't done anything yet.
Thank you.
There's no change in one day. There might be a small little pivot, but change takes time. And we have to allow ourselves and the resources or time to have that happen.
Absolutely. It's just going to the doctor and you've got a back pain and the doctor tells you, you've got to exercise more. You've got to try yoga. You need to do this. And you don't do it. And then you'll go back to the doctor and say, hey, I'm not feeling better because I didn't do anything that you told me. It's the same thing, right? The doctor's going to be like, what?
It's the same thing.
So can you share an example of a session with a client that helped this individual go far into their own understanding of their spiritual growth?
Right. Well, I have, how much time do
You
you
have a lot of, we've got time.
time do you have? Well, I think that one of the things with spiritual growth is that it comes in micro ways and it comes in macro ways. There have been many times when spiritual growth is just about that they've connected with spirit energy. Or maybe the spiritual growth is because they have these great big aha moments. That is way beyond spirit that moves into energy. How about I share something that happened with a client that was an understanding of how spirit energy works. What is the example of spirit energy? In my clients, when they book a session with me, they can answer a few questions as an option that you can answer these few questions if you want to. It's like, your name. And I ask silly questions, things like your favorite color, your favorite smell, just fun things. And
Icebreakers.
icebreakers. So I showed up for a session. They were supposed to show up at 10 a.m. in the morning. I don't remember. And 10 a.m. comes up, and there's no show, and it is a woman, and I have their intake form, so I text them and say, "Hi, you have a session right now. Are you having any problems?" And no, nothing happens. I called 10 minutes later, and I said, "Are you aware that you?" I'm actually on the phone with them. "Are you aware that you have a session with me right now?" And she says, "I don't. What are you talking about?" I said, "Oh, maybe you drunkenly made a session. My name is Kimo. This is what I do." She goes, "Oh, I know exactly who you are." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "But maybe someone gifted this to you?" She goes, no, 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 no. And she says, well, what credit card was used? And I told her. She goes, no one has that credit card. No one has my email, not even my partner. And I
Wow.
said, well, can I share with you what questions were answered? And she says, yes, but this is not a good time. And I said, okay. She goes, but I'm curious. So I said, well, they answered, one of the questions was, is there anyone that you missed? And the answer was grandmother. And she says, I just lost my grandmother. And she goes, and I'm struggling. This is why it's not a good time. I'm here by myself with my kids. I'm working really hard to just be okay, but I'm not doing well. And I said, okay, you want to jump on? So we jumped on the actual official phone call. I had all the family come into the room. And I said, well, let's just go on for a moment. So the second question that was answered was, what was your favorite color? And the answer was purple. And she goes, oh my God. She goes, that's an inside joke between my grandmother and I. And I was like, well, what do you mean? She says, well, I always joked around as a little girl that I was going to wear a purple dress to my grandmother's funeral. And at this point, she's giving a lot of evidence. Now, we still to this day do not know how this session was booked because it all came in as information from the grandmother. And I know that energy works electromagnetically and that spirit energy can work electromagnetically. I have never had a spirit book a session before. To go even further, the third and final question that she answered, this grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that she maybe booked you this session before she passed? And we looked at the date. The session had been booked after she passed. And again, no one has this information, her credit card, her email. But the last question was, what is your favorite smell? And the answer was something I had never heard of before. It was said, swamp cooler. And I don't
What?
a swamp cooler. I don't know what a swamp cooler is. So I said, it says that your favorite smell is swamp cooler. And this woman just starts laughing and crying at the same time. She goes, no one could have known that information. And I said, I have to be honest, I'm not even intuiting right now. This answer's on the intake form. She says, swamp cooler is a joke that I made to my grandmother. You always smell like a swamp cooler. So in the end, I said, well, now let me do what I do. And grandma did come in, and I had the kids do all these exercises in terms of being able to connect to grandma. And in that moment, the grandmother's energy got so bright that it literally created this halo effect around the whole entire family. And in
Wow.
that, the whole entire family was able to literally change vibration, to get connection, and more as a family unit that wasn't about grief. It was about celebration. And then the connection was done, and that was it. So that was an example that I love to use as spirit connection, helping the individual have more relaxation and understanding.
That's beautiful.
That's
But is
book a session.
Yes, everyone book with Kimo. Everything's down below in the description box anyway. So
I've never had a spirit book a session though. How funny.
okay. But it's so worthwhile when you connect people with their deceased loved ones. To me, I've been doing this for so long. I always surprise myself. I do,
Yeah.
and it's not an ego thing. What I'm saying, it's more not surprise myself like my abilities, but more about as in I surprise myself as to what I can tune into and pick up and information that I can feed and give to my clients or the individuals that I'm reading for. And it just, to me, this is worth everything. And it was worth, dropping that career and the high paying job.
Absolutely.
I don't care. I don't care because it's not about money. It's not about, this is about
Absolutely.
connecting.
Well, and I can guarantee you that when it comes to the connection part of you are much happier than you were before. But also,
100%.
you can use the experiences in your muggle work life that you had prior to this. You use those experiences to be helpful to the way that you continually intuit your information. Most likely from the creativity, most likely from the being able to have a conversation with someone else and listen to them and respond and pivot and more. All of that was in preparation to be able to do what you're doing. So I look at it like that.
I agree 100%. Also, I don't know how much time you have, but I think, are you okay with another 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Because I don't want to take much of your time because I know you're busy because I know how this your days go. But you You read auras, right? Like, so you can see auras, you can read them, right? That's something that I can't do, for instance.
Not yet.
But not, well, I can't, that,
Not
actually, I
yet.
take it back. Sometimes I do, but it
Hmm.
depends. I don't
Hmm.
know. Sometimes I do, but I'm working on it. So you read auras, and the other, well, let me rephrase my question. Would you like to share with everyone how you develop your abilities? How did it start and how you develop them?
Yeah.
And
So
where you are at now when it comes to your spiritual connection and you being a spiritual educator as well.
I think that one of the things that I do have in my favor is that I'm insatiably curious. Always.
Mm.
Always. I am a voracious reader of all the things that have an alignment with what I'm looking for and more. I'm a natural educator. I've been teaching since I was 16. I worked in pre-collegiate education for 21 years before I retired
Wow.
as an educator. So this is just natural to who I am, and I utilize my abilities to kind of work in tandem with all of that. But,
Mm-hmm.
for example, when it came to aura reading, when I was a child, I was seeing color and I was always painting and more, not realizing that what I was tuning into was color spectrum, not only around individuals, but around objects and, using a lot of sight vision. I didn't realize that I was doing all those things. So
Mm-hmm.
actually technically now, because I specialize in kids, when I'm working with kids, I actually use a lot of auric work with them, but I don't use a lot of language, We use crayons and colored pencils and we do all this kind of stuff because kids are very, very intuitive. But
Very.
when it comes to the challenge of learning how to tune in, I literally, to go back to what I said earlier, I challenge myself on a month-to-month basis. Now, for the listeners or for the viewers at home, if a month-to-month basis is too much, then give yourself a year-to-year basis. I must show a change in growth between
Mm-hmm.
January of 2023 to January 2024, and to genuinely become excited. When I work creatively, I'll be working with producers or directors, and I'll say before we start to create a show, or film a show or be on a program or something, I will always say the same thing. I can't wait to see what comes out of us. And I say that as a mantra so the individuals around me understand creatively, I have no idea where I'll be in the next month or hour of this filming, but I do know it will be good. And I genuinely create excitement around that, which allows me to supercharge that. Now, to go in further about aura started off, at a young age, but now, yes, I read auric stuff. However, I like to go way beyond aura when it comes to color zones. For me, your aura lies within your second, third, and fourth energetic color zone. We have these approximately 7 different energy zones around our body. Aura isn't really much in the first energetic zone, but it is in the second, third, and fourth energetic zone. However, we gain a lot of information from aura, but aura is always in a state of change. Now,
Mm-hmm.
how do I know that? Well, that's what it looks like. It's always changing because it's always connected to your electromagnetic field, which is in connection to your emotions, which always change. But in your in seventh energy zone, there are a series of colors up there that do not change. So when a client meets with me, if we do color work, it's way beyond, let me tell you your colors. These are the fun things about you. I don't do that. I'm going to teach. So if we do color work going beyond aura, going into the sixth and the seventh energy zone, I call them soul skin colors. If we can tune into those colors, that gives you a template of the way that you will always be, pre-existence, post-existence of this life expression. So that kind of work is really helpful if we're trying to break through some kind of stagnations and plateaus of our professional life, our private life, our relationship to ourselves. What do I do? What is my purpose? Color work is wildly effective for those reasons. But that I couldn't see at the age of 3. I couldn't even see at the age of 13. That had to be a progress, a progression, meeting with other individuals who could be a reflector for me, and then practicing it over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. It's just fascinating, or something that fascinates me because I agree. It is part of your energy. It is part of it.
Yeah,
It's almost like it's almost like you called it soul skins, right? When you're on the
yeah, I do.
sixth level. I love that term actually.
I
I
do.
love that term.
I do.
It's such a good term. Did you coin the term, or is it?
Well, I that is a term. There's another high seer in based out of Hawaii. Um,
Mm-hmm.
family member of mine. So, but yeah, so she's a female high seer, and when she said that term first, and I said that is exactly what that is. So it just hit, and she was like, "Great, let's make it a whole thing." So I am slowly writing a book based on all the different soul skin colors that I can see. I think one thing to remind the collective when they are going out to get their photo taken with aura photography with Acrylian cameras, when you get your aura photographed, you'll get like a little pamphlet describing what the colors are.
Hmm.
Always keep in mind that every person who wrote those colors will have their own interpretation.
Sure.
So it's always about trusting the reader in the moment. I made the mistake of being curious one day, saying, "Well, what do people say about aura?" And I found 20 different answers to the same color, which tells you it's just up to interpretation. So what I utilize when it comes to color, I focus in on what is the evidence that I have found based on everyone with this exact color system. What is the evidence? What is the similarity? What are the anomalies? But when I speak about color, it is specific to the things that I have understood and practiced for decades. Meaning,
Mm.
this is based on my own evidence.
Which is what having a spiritual practice is, and being, a light seer as well, isn't it? It is based on your own interpretation and how you've learned it. There's no right or wrong. It's just how
It's
you can.
right. Well, and this is where it gets tricky because it is based on your own bespoke version of right or wrong, but then you have to figure out if you were right or wrong. Because
Right.
for me, in terms of going into medical scanning and working with doctors and surgeons, that's not something that I was ready to do at 16 years old. Only now am I able to step into that because I have learned through evidence of clients that I've met with and being able to see tumors and cancers before they were diagnosed, and then getting verifications from their doctors to say, "Oh, that was right. Well, how can
Mm.
I lean into that more? How can I work on that ability more?" And that is actually one that I'm continually learning about because there are so many different maladies and ailments in the body that I'm not a doctor, I don't know. But I've learned that certain kinds of things tend to look the same for me. Every single time I tune into someone's medical scan, if I were to see stenosis or vestibular neuritis or fibromyalgia or hypothyroid or Crohn's or anything, those kinds of ailments and maladies usually look the same to me. So then I'll take a look at them and I'll say, "Okay, before you tell me what is going on with your body medically, let's take a look at what's going on in terms of the energy." And my guess is that you probably got something like this going on, right? And it's
Right.
spot on, right?
Right.
Because it manifests that way for me.
True. Absolutely.
Weird, right?
So, last question before we go, closing questions is, first of all, what's your star sign? Because I do like astrology and
Oh
I
yeah, okay.
do.
I'm
Sorry?
an Aries.
I knew it. I don't know. I knew it. I was going to say you're an Aries because I can feel the energy.
I'm an Aries. I am an Aries. And
And
I'm not very good at astrology, but I have been told many, many times, "Of course you are, Kima."
yeah, oh yeah, there you go. I mean, it's not that it's not like you picked up some of the Aries characteristic, but that's the
Mhm.
first thing that I wanted to say. It's Aries. And what's your favorite book, and what book do you recommend?
Oh, I love this question. I don't have a favorite. I have in queue probably about 12 books that I rotate. Um, my current book that I'm just loving, and I'm gonna recommend everyone getting this book.
Please do.
It's The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrow. You're
Ooh,
gonna love it. So
I'm gonna
this
look it up.
you're gonna love it. It's a magical book. The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrow. I love words. I try to be as prosaic or verbose as I can. I love language. But the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows is a book that's written like a poem that does have definitions of words, but these are words that are defining emotions that we feel like are quite satellite. Like I'm the only one in orbit feeling like this. But in actuality, it's something that many people will experience. There's just no language for it. So in the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, they pulled into some of the dying languages, some of the dead languages, and they made an amalgam of words that you feel like are very specific to you, but no. Many people will feel. So
I'm definitely getting the book, definitely, because you know what? I'm a writer too, and I when I was
go.
younger, I wrote poems. So, and I would like read William Blake, for
Mhm.
instance. Like William Blake was my favorite when I was a teen. So, sold,
You're gonna
sold. I'm
you're
gonna
gonna
get the
love
book.
it. It's so great. I keep it next to my bedside table. It's a great book.
Oh, Perfect. Well, Kimo, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. And I have to say, I was trying hard during the interview to not connect, but I was seeing some stuff. Like I kept getting like a red triangle, and then I could see a purple butterfly when you were talking about
It's
kids.
hard
Like,
to connect, right?
and I'm like, stop, because it's just, I can't multitask. I can, but I mean, I'm like, I need to focus on you and not everything else is coming.
Getting distracted by all my symbols and more. That's so exciting.
Oh my God. Yeah. But I mean, you know that you're much better, I feel, than me blocking it. Sometimes I block it, but it just comes through. But anyway, that's what happens, you guys, when we get together. Thank you so much for joining us. Everything is down below. All of Kimo's details, his website, how you can book a reading, where you can get where you can find him on social media. His TikToks are fabulous. I love how he debunks all these paranormal videos that are being flying around TikTok, and people just believe that every single thing is a ghost. We've talked about things like that on this channel. I've debunked stuff as well. I've done videos on paranormal videos. So go ahead and follow Kimo. As you can see, he's got very bright energy. He is not just charming. You are extremely, like, you pull people in. You pull people in. That's why you're so good at what you're doing, and you have so much success.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.